As we've mentioned in previous marketing interviews, and as producers themselves know, break-even costs are much tighter than in recent years. That could mean determining costs of production would be valuable in order to determine the status of profits or losses. Earlier this week, we talked with UNL Extension Cropping Systems educator Nathan Mueller about why it's so important to assess input costs.
You really need to know how much it costs for your fertilizer, and then are you getting additional money back if you're increasing the rates. The same thing comes down to how much are you spending on seed per acre, how much are you spending on cash rent. So that's really looking at an accrual balance for a crop or a farm. And once you know that, then it's easier to say, if I do this particular management practice, we might expect X bushels gained, but it costs this much.
Yeah.
And so it really helps making decisions, especially when margins are tight.
Yeah, you say that the input cost could be as much as 35% of your operation.
Yeah.
That's a significant amount.
Yeah, so seed, fertilizer, and chemical, and as an agronomist, those are the main ones I'm going to focus on. And so, that makes up, a fairly large percent. So how can we make improvements within that area?
In September for Market Journal, we talked about soybean seed selection, and that was one of the areas that you really felt was one that could be capitalized by farmers.
Yeah, and I think the main reason is you're not actually just going to spend more money or less money in that area. Your goal is to do a better job with the money you're spending. So within those varieties, we know there's differences in performance. There's differences in genetics and how they interact with your management and the area. And so the main focus is to gain that extra yield from variety selection. There can be a 15 bushel difference in performance. So you're spending the same money, but you're getting extra yield. And so there you're not cutting costs, you're just doing a better job of spending the money you have. Now
that we're done with the harvest, or at least close to done with the harvest, where can people go for more information about finding yield results?
Yeah, a lot of the area I go, just because the massive data in the region, is first trials. They have multiple locations across Nebraska and across the whole Midwest, so you can see, did maybe this variety or hybrid perform good in eastern Nebraska, but maybe it didn't over in Iowa. So that's some questions then to ask your seed agronomist or your production agronomist. Why would that be? Why did it perform here? What were some management or environmental issues?
Let's move into fertilizer as an input cost. Critical first to determine what's actually in the soil profile?
Yeah, soil test. If you look at, you might only spend $1 an acre for the soil test, and it makes maybe $100 difference in how much you're going to spend. So the first thing is, if you haven't had a recent soil test, is to take one. And then the next question is, how do you take it? Well, you can do on a per field basis, which is the cheapest. But with your yield monitor DAF, you can look at that this area's been consistently low yielding, this area high. So it's likely you've been removing different amount of phosphorus, different amount of potassium. So looking at that and then putting that fertilizer where you're most likely to see a return. So putting fertilizer on the low testing soils and less or none on the high testing soils. So again, your total amount of fertilizer bill may be the same. You may be putting the same total amount on, but you're distributing it where you're going to get the most return.
With chemical, you said it's not always with input costs something where you're going to reduce the amount you spend and get more back. It's not always the way it's going to go. And chemical is one of those things?
Yeah, chemical, one of those, can we reduce, maybe do a half a rate, a pre-emerge? Well, in this coming year, that may not be the best decision. For example, in areas we had hailed up in Dodge County, Burke County, Cumming County, there's a lot of water hemp that went to seed in those fields, especially in those cornfields that people kept. So we're going to have this huge seed bank to deal with. And so there may be a situation where you were spending a little bit more money is going to gain you more yield than it normally would.
The yield results site Nathan mentioned is firstseedtest.com. We'll link to it on the Market Journal homepage. You can find more information from Nathan on his blog at croptechcafe.org.